If you've ever wondered if epoxy floors are hard to install, I can assure you they're not. Watch how we teach a first-time installer how simple it is and how beautiful this floor turns out. We're on another project, guys. We're about to coat 750 square feet. James, I'm gonna have him follow me around. We're gonna be filming this project super raw. So what that means is I'm gonna be talking with my buddies. They're starting a coating company, walking them through the steps on how to install decorative epoxy floors. So Kyle's gonna be our mixer. Got him over here. He's gonna be throwing down the mixing. I've already went over mixing with him. They know how to do that. And so I'll be on the job or on the project with them. Kyle's gonna constantly be mixing the batches, sending them to us. This is the garage we're gonna coat. And then that way I can kind of walk through every step with these guys and kind of just teach them everything that needs to be done on these projects. So just to kind of bring you up to speed on what's been done. These guys have already shot blasted the floor. So we have it really porous. And then we did a thin coat of epoxy to seal up all the pores in the concrete. What that does is a few things. First thing, minimizes outgassing bubbles. And so if there is any outgassing, we'll see it, we'll be able to address it, we'll be able to fill it. Next thing it does is it creates an extremely strong bond between our coatings and the concrete, because that first coat of epoxy soaks deep into those pores and permanently locks to that concrete. And so now we're basically ready to do our decorative coat. So we're basically skipping primer because this seal coat acts as a primer. And so we don't have to prime the floor. Now, if you're maybe doing a white floor, you'd probably want to prime it, but we're doing silver base, black highlights, so we don't have to prime this floor. So that's kind of the process here. We're gonna just be super raw. I'm gonna just be explaining to these guys every step as we're doing it. Kyle's gonna be constantly mixing fresh batches for us. We're gonna do this in multiple steps, so we always have fresh product. And yeah, it should be really good. For all you contractors, guys maybe getting into this industry, it's gonna be a great video for you to see all the aspects of how the epoxies go down, how to minimize issues, how to work in sections so you always have fresh products. So we're gonna get started. I think everything's ready. Again, we'll show a shot of Kyle mixing the first batch. We're gonna do 3-gallon kits at a time, and then we'll dump those out and he'll constantly be handing us fresh product to put on the floor. Okay, so we're ready to pour, guys. One thing I do want to point out is we've marked the walls so we know how far each 3-gallon kit needs to go. Even though we're using our notch squeegee, we know this is going to spread it out at the right thickness, but we just want some extra assurance knowing that we don't go past those lines, or we need to at least get to those lines. And so when they pour this out, they're going to stick the product, not have it go past this line, and then pour a perimeter bead around the edge, and then spread it out with the notch squeegee. We'll do the next section, spread it out, then we're gonna roll it with the roller, and then we're gonna do highlights. So we're gonna do 2 3-gallon kits before we add the highlights. And then we're doing 12 ounces of highlights per 3-gallon kit. Since we're doing 2, we're gonna make 24 ounces of highlights once we have those 2 3-gallon kits spread out on the floor. And so when we're ready to add highlights, we should have the base coat spread out to this line right here. And then we'll do the highlights in this section, and then we just repeat that process. And so I'm gonna hand these guys the tools. I'll be constantly talking through it with them. And you guys are about to see how easy this really is to do. Yep, just keep dumping it, try to make, you got quite a bit right through there, so maybe add some little more once you get down there a ways. And then you can let that bucket drain out since you did the 3P2 process. So as long as you guys are doing our 3P2 mixing process, we can dump the buckets upside down, let everything drain out. But if you don't use transfer buckets and do our process, I wouldn't dump them out like this, okay? Don't let them sit upside down because you're gonna run the risk of getting soft spots. So always follow the mixing 3P2 process, and you can do that. Never have an issue with soft spots. So yep, so now we're just spreading it. Again, that squeegee is gonna leave it a certain thickness. I always like to do my perimeter first, right? Like you can run.
Just run it up.
Well, yeah, like run this. Okay. Get your edge done. If you need to pull some product, again, it doesn't matter because this squeegee is gonna put it down at the right thickness. Sure. And then however I angle it, I can push product out the edge, right? Get close to that edge, flatten it off. So I always like to do my perimeters and then I just fill it in. Now this ain't a very big wide pass we're doing, so it is a little bit more tight. Yeah, so a little tip for you guys. So James, can you see the gap right here? Yes, sir. So this gap, guys, if you fill that with paintable latex caulking before you do your epoxy coat or primer, then you don't have to worry about resin draining down in there. So cool little tip for you, just make sure it's paintable latex caulking. Run it tight down in there, that'll seal up those edges. That way you don't lose any resin on those stem walls where the concrete meets them. All right, so check it out. We got our next batch. Kyle's just constantly mixing for us. So what I'm gonna do is pour this out for them. And once they get going here, they'll be able to move really quick. It always takes a little bit to get all your edges done. Once you get out in the main part of the floor, you only have one edge on each side, so you're able to move a lot quicker. But again, I wanna make sure I'm not going past our marks. Okay, so now what I would do is I would just work this into here and then start going back and forth, spreading it to that. But we don't want to go past that line. All right, so they got the first 3-gallon kit down, right? And we ended with that 3-gallon kit right on our line. Reason is because we got these awesome Leggari notch squeegees that spread the product at a certain thickness for our base coats. And so now this is our second 3-gallon kit. Kyle's over there mixing highlights already. Show him a little shot of Kyle. As long as I'm angled the right way, yep, it's gonna push product out away from me, you know what I mean? Yep, exactly. And then you can just rock and roll. So same thing with that seal coat, guys. You want to just saturate this in different spots throughout the floor, right? We don't want to stay in one spot and just suck a bunch of resin out of that one spot, right? You're just going to roll it, okay? So one of you can roll it real quick, and the other one can make sure all the edges are hit, right? With the little guy. So notice his roller, when he's rolling, it doesn't sound sticky. Yeah. So that basically tells me we got a good thick coat of epoxy out here, and that's because we put it down at 45 square foot a gallon. That's what that notch squeegee's for. If your roller sounds sticky at any point, you have a thin spot. If you're rolling it and you start pushing a pile of resin, then you have a thick spot there. Take the time to just spread it out a little. And you can, for tight spots like this, you flip this guy around, right? All right. Then you can get in those tighter spots, right? So we got John cross rolling with the 18-inch. Craig's over here making sure all of the edges and corners have epoxy up to them. They're all hit, there's no missed spots. Biggest thing is when you are doing your base coat, don't mix your highlights until you're ready, right? Last thing we want to do is have resin sit in the bucket, whether it's your base coat or your highlights. So Kyle mixed that up. We're basically ready for them. So we're gonna put them down on the floor. Now, if you mix your highlights the same time you mix your base coat, these are just gonna be sitting in a bucket, heating up, setting up the whole time you're doing your base coat. So never mix your highlights before you're ready for them. It's always good to have the same guy do them, like apply them, right? Because if you switch like halfway through the job, the other guy's gonna do them a little different. No, we'll use the squeegee to blend it. Yep, so okay, we got our base coat spread out, edges are hit, cross rolled real quick, and so now we're ready to add the highlights. So highlights are simple. We're just gonna do smaller vein pattern, right? And then we're gonna blend that in with the squeegee. Now I just wanna make sure I don't do a pattern going that way, another one. I'm constantly going different directions, right? So now I'm gonna go this way. Biggest thing you want to do is make sure you have enough product before you run out. You don't want to pour like 90% of your highlights out and then you're out of product halfway through, okay? So I like to just go around, get all my veins, make sure I like them, and then I can go back and add to them, okay? It's like, you know, you look at the floor, right? It's pretty even, but obviously I did more on mine. So you're gonna wanna come back, you're gonna wanna add some in the same one. All right, so once you got like the floor mapped out, now you wanna make sure it looks like it's going under the walls, right? So you wanna probably add a little bit in this corner, and then I'll go in between all of these, and I'll just add a little strip of color right next to the wall. That way it looks like once the trim's up, it goes underneath the wall.
Coming out or just parallel?
Just different directions, right? Perfect, that's all it takes. We just want color, right? And then I would add a little guy right here, just a tad bit. So we're just about ready to blend the colors, right? And so I told Kyle to start mixing that next batch. We don't really want to have to wait for the mixing guy, so he's going to start mixing. It'll take about 5-6 minutes to mix that, about as long as it'll take to blend this. So now, like, if you stand back, come back here, right? Looks pretty even, right, with color?
Yep.
Now, obviously, I would put some color back in there. Easy way to do that is you can just dip your squeegee, right, and get some color back there, okay? Instead of trying to get back in there, right? Now we got some color. Now the trick to blending it is we don't want to move the resin. We just want to blend the surface, okay? So hold it at a low angle, right? And just run across the floor. All we're trying to do is blend this enough until it doesn't look like we poured out a line, right? And you're going to go different directions, but I'm not applying a lot of pressure. I'm being real light. Notice how I'm not moving the resin. I'm just kind of skipping across the surface, different directions. If I want to pull some color somewhere, I'll get black there. Now I got some black over there. Real simple. The biggest thing is going different directions all through the floor. And then we can always come back and like, oh, I think this needs blended more, right? Kind of has some squigglies. I can fine tune some spots and just blend it a little bit more, right? So like I said, guys, when buckets comes in, make sure we're dumping it out, right? We never want to let it sit in the bucket. So yeah, you happy with this? Yeah. So now it's just same process, same exact process. Base coat, roll it, add your highlights, blend it. The last thing we have to do on here is spray denatured alcohol, right? We want to mist the surface with denatured alcohol. Never set your handle down in a puddle of epoxy. Next guy that comes picks that up is not going to be happy. Notice how Craig didn't go past his section, right? We got a mark here, imaginary line down the wall. So that was 1 3-gallon kit. Now he's got his next one. We're basically done with the base coat. All they got to do is roll it. So perfect time for him to start mixing. That way when he's done, we're ready to put them down and they're not sitting in the container. So guys, the reason that we do these jobs in sections are because, like, imagine doing your base coat on this whole thing and then going back to where you first started and doing your highlights. That stuff's gonna start setting up. And so you can do a 100,000 square foot job by just splitting it up in sections, and you're always gonna have fresh products. You're never gonna run into like it setting up too fast, okay? So that's always why we split these up like this, so you always have fresh resin, maximum working time, because it's always fresh for each section. Remember, we did 24 ounces per 2 sections, but we decided to only use half of that. So I told Kyle, hey, only make 12 ounces this time, okay? And so now you know you have to use all that, and you'll have the same amount of highlights that we used on that one. Okay. So keep that in mind, guys, when you're doing these floors. If you wind up not using all the highlights, try to figure out what you use. That way you know for all the next sections, just use that same amount. Do the same thing, work in the main part of the floor, get your veins random, right? Don't use all your product, you can always go back and add more. And then once you're happy with the pattern, you wanna hit your edges, the mist spots on all your edges. And then if you have some left, you just fill in some of the veins that maybe are thinner, right? All right. So biggest thing on these floors, make sure you got enough manpower, right? You never want to have to like do a section, stop, jump out there, mix it, come back, right? Because the stuff's going to be setting up. So always have a mixer constantly for you. Have a guy that's spreading it, blending highlights. Could one guy do this whole floor and one guy mix? Absolutely, right? But if it's your first job, you might want to have a couple people just so you're not kind of running hectic and trying to get everything done with just a few guys. So that's one of the biggest things. Next thing is dump all the product out of the bucket. Do not leave it in the bucket. Don't mix your highlights until you're ready to put them on the floor. And mark out your sections like we did. That's gonna ensure that you're spreading the product at the right thickness. So yeah, I'm gonna hop out and get them some denatured alcohol. They'll finish this out, and then we'll come back when everything's done, show you guys some final footage of this. We will be putting a matte urethane top coat on it, I think tomorrow, right? So we're gonna do a matte urethane with our grit additive. So it's gonna really make this floor pop with that dull, natural finish to it. So yeah, you guys did good, man. It's great.